Welcome to NTD News. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Here are today's top stories. Long-awaited talks on the Middle East peace plan are set to take place. President Trump will host the talks at the White House. The third and final day of the prosecution's opening arguments has arrived on Capitol Hill. As Democrats push their case for impeaching Trump, some senators are already looking ahead to the rebuttal. Chinese health officials grapple to contain the coronavirus as the death toll hit 26 today. The quick spread of the illness is overwhelming local health systems and prompted officials to lock down 15 cities. And Brexit passes an important milestone. Key European leaders have approved the terms of the UK's separation. Chinese health officials struggle to contain the spread of the coronavirus as the deadly outbreak has killed 26 and sickened nearly 900 in China. But the World Health Organization is still reluctant to call it a global health emergency.
The World Health Organization said Thursday that the mystery illness that has caused 26 deaths and infected hundreds in China is not yet a global health emergency.
That's a bit too early to consider that this event is a public health emergency of international concern.
But he added that the assessing panel was divided, almost 50-50 on the decision. 2 deaths have been reported outside the province where the outbreak began, and infected cases are reported in all provinces except Tibet, according to Chinese health officials. 12 provinces are under the highest public health alert, and several videos posted on social media platforms show patients suddenly falling to the ground. Local hospitals are crammed and facing severe medical shortages. Fears of the virus's fast spread are mounting in China as hundreds of millions of Chinese travel across the nation and abroad during the week-long Lunar New Year holiday, which begins on Saturday. 13 cities are under lockdown by airtime, but some Chinese are saying the measure comes a little too late.
I think it's a little bit late. Most people who want to leave the city have already left. They will be long way away by now. No, it appears that people who have not been to Wuhan are infected, so I think the epidemic situation is almost out of control.
And Chinese people are questioning the authorities for their lack of transparency and long response time to the illness. Wuhan health authorities announced the outbreak on December 31st, with 27 infected, but the city only began screening passengers on January 14th. During those 2 weeks, hundreds of thousands of travelers passed through the Tianhe International Airport in Wuhan.
When the epidemic situation was confirmed, Wuhan, which is a city with so many cases, should have been under management and control. I think it's a little bit late.
Some Chinese citizens are also saying some party officials and those with inside information fled the city hours before announcing the lockdown, leaving common citizens behind. Adding to the fear is the fact that the health officials are still working to understand more about the virus.
There is still a lot we don't know. We don't know the source of this virus. We don't understand how easily it spreads. And we don't fully understand its clinical features or severity.
And disease experts at the Davos summit on Thursday warned that the outbreak was incredibly serious and potentially very costly to fight. And there will be many more cases.
We don't want to overstate the panic here because there is so much uncertainty. And we want to keep a sort of calm, moderated approach to it, but we do have to take this incredibly seriously because you don't often get an animal virus coming into humans, passing between humans, and being spread by the respiratory route.
Outside of China, one U.S. person who recently traveled to Wuhan has been diagnosed with the coronavirus. Other countries with cases reported include Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Singapore, and Vietnam.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said this morning that a second case of the virus is confirmed in the U.S. It's a Chicago woman in her 60s who traveled from Wuhan on January 13th. The CDC says the woman is now in a stable condition but remains isolated for monitoring. Officials say the immediate risk to the U.S. is low, but they do expect more domestic cases to be reported in the coming days. And President Trump said he will soon unveil the details of the Middle East peace plan. The plan aims to end the decades-long conflict between Israel and the Palestinians.
President Trump said on Thursday he will release details of his long-delayed peace plan for the Middle East before Tuesday next week. He has invited Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israeli election rival Benny Gantz to come together for talks at the White House. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence greeted Netanyahu outside the West Jerusalem American Embassy on Thursday. Pence said it was the Prime Minister's suggestion to invite the leader of the Blue and White Party, Gantz, who has accepted the invitation.
He has accepted the invitation to join the Prime Minister with the President at the White House next week.
Pence said the meeting is to discuss the prospects of peace as well as regional issues. The political aspects of the peace initiative have been closely guarded. Only the economic proposals have been unveiled. It addresses in detail political issues between Israel and the Palestinians, such as the status of Jerusalem. President Trump indicated his administration had spoken briefly to the Palestinians and would speak to them again. The launch of the plan has been delayed numerous times over the last 2 years. Gantz this week lifted his objection to having the peace plan be published before Israel's March election.
And highlighting successes in foreign policy, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made some remarks in Florida yesterday. His visit to the Sunshine State comes after returning from an international tour.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told an audience of Floridians that the president's working to level the playing field between China and the U.S.
Last week, you saw a winning trade deal with China. You know, President Trump had just a simple way of thinking about this, which is, well, this relationship's just not fair.
But China was just 1 point. Pompeo lauded the administration for its successes in foreign policy, including its killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani.
I have to tell you, I was part of that decision-making process. Lots could have potentially gone wrong. But President Trump made the courageous decision that said, we're going to protect America. We're going to take a terrorist from the battlefield. We're going to reduce the risk here to each and every one of you. We're going to make America safer. And we did.
His trip to the Sunshine State follows his return from an international tour to several countries. Earlier this week, he was in Colombia, where he met with interim Venezuelan President Juan Guaido. There, Pompeo said he expects the U.S. to offer Guaido more support in his fight against the socialist Maduro regime.
We're working to restore democracy in Venezuela. Senate America will stand with the Venezuelan people until we can have a free and fair election and restore democracy to that once proud nation.
He also talked about the administration's pro-Israel approach. A day before, the vice president said the Israeli prime minister and his main political rival would visit the White House to discuss prospects of peace with Palestinians.
The U.S. yesterday imposed Iran-related sanctions on 2 individuals and 6 companies, including 4 firms tied to the national Iranian oil company. The U.S. Treasury Department said it blacklisted 2 companies based in Hong Kong, one in Shanghai and one in Dubai, for helping Iran's state-owned National Iranian Oil Company export millions of dollars of goods in violation of U.S. sanctions. The sanctions would freeze all assets held by the companies that fall under U.S. jurisdiction, generally bar U.S. companies and individuals from dealing with them, and potentially subject non-U.S. financial institutions to U.S. sanctions that knowingly facilitate significant transactions for the company. The announcements are the latest step in the U.S.'s maximum pressure campaign, designed to squeeze the Iranian economy to try to force Iran to accept more constraints on its nuclear program, regional activities, and pursuit of ballistic missiles. Today is the 3rd day of opening arguments from the House managers. Senators at the impeachment trial of President Trump had another long day yesterday, with some saying the arguments are getting repetitive.
It seems like Groundhog's Day in the Senate, from what we heard from the managers yesterday, the day before. It is the same thing day after day after day.
Republican senators' thoughts on Thursday's trial proceedings echo those of the day before. They say House Democrats are providing nothing new and are just repeating the same points over and over.
The Democrats have literally bought into that premise that if you just say it often enough, it must be true.
Mazie Hirono, a Democratic senator, said the Republicans were being hypocritical as they hadn't allowed the impeachment managers access to documents they were requesting. On the first day of the trial, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer presented motions requesting documents and witnesses selected by the Democrats be included. The motions were rejected. House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler accused senators of voting for a cover-up. Independent Senator Lisa Murkowski took offense, saying on Thursday she was working hard to get to a fair process. She said the House had chosen not to go through the courts to get witnesses and documents, so as to bring the impeachment trial forward without delay. Trump condemned the proceedings as unfair and corrupt in a tweet Thursday. Republican senators said they are ready for the president's defense team to have their chance to refute the House arguments.
So I think that my frustration is the American people are getting half the story at this point. There's a proverb 18:17, that says the first one that comes along seems right until they're cross-examined.
Langford said he was looking forward to hearing both sides of the story.
Senator Josh Hawley said yesterday it became clear that former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden should be included in witnesses called to the trial. And today at the White House, the Trump administration plans to unveil efforts to crack down on counterfeit and pirated goods sold on major e-commerce sites.
The federal government is set to reveal plans on Friday to crack down on counterfeit and pirated goods sold online. The National Intellectual Property Rights Center in Arlington, Virginia, is leading the charge. Law enforcement agencies are planning immediate action to identify counterfeit goods. They're set to impose fines and other penalties against sellers and want legal authority to go after major online marketplaces. In April, President Trump ordered a crackdown on third-party online marketplaces selling counterfeit goods. A memo he signed said that the value of global trade in counterfeit and pirated goods may rise to $500 billion a year. About 20% of that trade infringes on U.S. intellectual property. Companies including Amazon, eBay, and Alibaba claim to have policies that ban counterfeit goods. Phase 1 of the China-U.S. trade deal signed this month requires China to more closely combat online infringement as well as pirated and counterfeit goods.
Mexican authorities yesterday adopted tougher measures against Central American migrants. They detained 800 who entered Mexico illegally from Guatemala, intending to reach the border with the U.S.
Mexico's cracking down on migrants entering the country illegally as a new wave of people crossing its border with Guatemala tests the government's resolve. On Thursday, 800 Central American migrants were detained after crossing the border. Security forces with riot shields were deployed, and authorities said they were still searching for another 200 migrants who remained in the area. Many of the migrants heading north say they're fleeing violence and economic hardship back home. Women and children make up a significant portion of this migrant group, bound for the United States in search of a better life. As tensions spilled over, one migrant collapsed under the intense sunlight. The current wave is the largest surge of people to test Mexico, since its president made various agreements with the United States to reduce the number of migrants arriving on their border.
Brexit passed an important milestone this morning as key European leaders approved its withdrawal agreement. This as British members of the European Parliament leave their European offices before Britain leaves the EU at the end of the month.
As Britain moves towards leaving the European Union on January 31st, British lawmakers have begun clearing out their European offices. It's a frustrating day for British members of the European Parliament who oppose leaving the European Union.
So I'll be one of those who's left washed up on the shore when the UK leaves.
Brexit remains a divisive issue in Britain even after the UK voted to leave in 2016. But even for some in Britain's Brexit party, it's a sombre day.
As a human being, I'm very mindful that people are losing their jobs.
The separation passed an important milestone on Friday morning as the heads of the European Commission and European Council signed the Brexit Withdrawal Agreement. Finding an agreement that worked for both sides has been a drawn-out process. The British House of Commons rejected its terms 3 times in 2019. This is the first time a country has left the European Union, meaning there was no precedent to follow.
My last act in this committee after so many years is to vote on the withdrawal of my country from the European Union.
Queen Elizabeth II approved the agreement on Thursday, and the European Parliament is expected to do so next Wednesday.
President Trump wished everyone a happy Chinese New Year today, which officially begins tomorrow. In a statement released by the White House, Trump said he and the First Lady send their warmest greetings to the millions of people around the world celebrating the Lunar New Year. Trump also gave a shout out to the Asian Americans, saying, quote, "Their immeasurable contributions to the U.S. are a unique part of our country's history and identity. This year is the year of the rat, the first sign in the Chinese zodiac. Millions will ring in the Lunar New Year with fireworks, food, and loved ones." Trump said, quote, "We wish them happiness, health, and prosperity in the year to come." And coming up, an artist installs a sculpture near the Danish parliament in honor of Hong Kong protesters. Find out why when we return.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interests, and we never will be. The Epoch Times is a non-partisan media. That means we don't stand for any political party. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Australian officials have been working to extricate the bodies of 3 U.S. firefighters from a plane that crashed in remote bushland, as the area's active wildfire status complicates an investigation into the accident.
An active bushfire status has complicated the probe into a plane crash which killed 3 American firefighters in the Australian state of New South Wales on Thursday. Australian Transport Safety Bureau investigators had to be escorted to the 1-kilometre-long crash site by firefighters on Friday, and police were still in the process of securing the area. ATSB Chief Commissioner Greg Hood said it was still too early to speculate on the cause of the crash of the C-130 Hercules tanker plane.
Our early understanding at this date is the aircraft arrived around about 13:15 on site and proceeded to drop a line of fire retardant across the ridge. Not long after the aircraft had discharged the retardant, the aircraft impacted terrain, killing the 3 on board the aircraft.
Ian Macbeth, Paul Hudson and Rick DeMorgan Jr. were all in their 40s and had previously worked for the US military, as well as extensive flight experience. 2 of them were married and left behind young children. Firefighters in Australia held a minute's silence, and flags on official buildings in New South Wales were flown at half-mast as a mark of respect on Friday. The New South Wales Rural Fire Service Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons said the country will never forget their sacrifice.
Today, quite rightly, passing a moment's silence, but we will be forever indebted to the enormous contribution and indeed the ultimate sacrifice that's been paid as a result of these extraordinary individuals doing a remarkable job, as they have done now for years here in New South Wales.
8 firefighters have been killed in the bushfire crisis since September. Around 250 firefighters from the United States and Canada have been deployed in the country since the start of the season.
An over 26-foot copper statue stands in front of Denmark's parliament. The statue, entitled Pillar of Shame, is to express solidarity with pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong.
The sculpture, which weighs around 3 tons, depicts 15 bodies twisted around each other. Its plinth bears the messages "Denmark stands with Hong Kong" and "The old cannot kill the young forever." The Danish sculptor said he produced the piece in collaboration with the Danish political party and the Danish wing of the human rights group Amnesty International. He said it represented the support from the Danish people to Hong Kong's struggle for democracy.
So this is support to these people who fight for this right in China at the moment.
On poles around the base of the statue are sculptures of protesters' heads, complete with yellow helmets and gas masks, which Gao Xiu said the protesters had sent him.
We make that together with the people that are here, who come from Hong Kong. They are a part of this putting up on this place. So I expect people will talk about China. I expect we'll get more focused on that.
Hong Kong returned from British to Chinese rule in 1997, with sweeping promises of a high degree of autonomy and freedoms. But the protesters say Beijing has failed to honor its commitments and say the rule of law and democratic freedoms are being eroded. Trine Christensen is the Secretary General of Amnesty International Denmark. She said art can do something that words can't.
It was important for us to place this sculpture here by our parliament to appeal to politicians in Denmark and elsewhere to say to Hong Kong, to say to China that trampling on rights will not be something that will be ignored.
Christensen added that human rights are universal and should be respected.
Coming up, high-tech Nike sneakers spark debate over possible unfair advantages. The ultralight shoes seem to give runners an extra boost. More on that after the break.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
Professors and runners weigh in on the debate over Nike's Vaporfly shoes, which some say give runners an unfair technological advantage.
Debate over Nike's Vaporfly line started following two stunning performances last year when Kenya's Eliud Kipchoge became the first man to run a marathon in under 2 hours. And a day later, Bridget Kosgei broke the women's marathon world record. A professor of sport and exercise science at Britain's Brighton University described the advanced footwear as technological doping.
Eventually, what we're going to see in the sport is going to be a race between the manufacturers rather than the race between the athletes.
Vaporfly combines carbon plate and ultra-springy compressed foam and is now a familiar sight at starting lines across the world. Nike says on its website that the shoe, which retails at around $250, has a built-in secret weapon.
So you're basically getting best of both worlds, of the lightness of a normal racing flat and then the protection and cushioning of a everyday running shoe.
Sports scientists writing in the British Medical Journal said the Vaporfly deviates from conventional running shoes in 3 ways. It has embedded carbon fiber plates, its midsole is made of super condensed foam, and its midsole is particularly thick.
These carbon fiber plates effectively push against the ground and help to push your foot off the floor quicker, so that you turn your legs over quicker, you're getting more steps per minute, you're just motoring along quicker with less effort.
World Athletics expects to announce the findings of a review into technology used in road and track shoes by the end of January. But it adds that recreational runners' use of the fluorescent footwear will be unaffected.
The switch to 5G internet connection is promising to change the way we search the net, chat with our loved ones, and even navigate in our cars. And experts say access to the next generation wireless network will be better than ever.
5G is here. Faster speeds, speedier connections, and seamless streaming. But most of us haven't seen these promised perks. That's because 5G coverage is still pretty limited across the country. But that may change this year. Tech experts say 5G phones and networks will increasingly become more accessible to everyone this year. So how fast is 5G? Experts say it's internet speed that's up to 100 times faster than 4G. Here's how it works. Much of 5G network will travel over super high frequency airwaves, which bring faster speeds and more bandwidth. Because they can't travel through walls or windows, wireless companies are having to install possibly millions of miniature cell towers on top of lampposts and buildings. That process has been slow as wireless companies roll out the service one market at a time. Experts say 5G coverage is expanding much faster than the pace of 4G rollout a decade ago. Right now in the U.S., all 4 of the major wireless providers are offering some kind of 5G service. Back in December, T-Mobile launched what it called the first nationwide 5G network. And the other 3 providers say they too will have coast-to-coast service later this year.
Coming up, an NBA competition in Paris. The Bucks and the Hornets are in the French capital for one of the NBA's few yearly games held in Europe. More on that after the break.
Absolutely the #1 show on the planet.
I love it.
Breathtaking.
Incredible.
Awesome.
Very exciting.
Mesmerizing. Really enjoyed it.
It makes you feel alive.
Absolutely flawless.
I laughed, I cried, colorful and vibrant and joyous.
The dancers, you guys are amazing.
They can just fly. Gravity does not apply to them.
Oh my gosh, I was so intrigued by this.
I get lost in the music and I get lost in what I'm seeing on stage.
It's a very eye-opening experience.
We came for her birthday.
Great experience, well worth it.
Even though it's been going for about 10 years, every year it's a completely different show.
I know this sold out very, very quickly, and I can see why now.
I think I've not seen something like this ever before.
I would recommend it to everybody.
I recommend it to everyone.
The Milwaukee Bucks and Charlotte Hornets are in Paris preparing for today's game, the first NBA fixture of the regular season to be held in the French capital.
In 2011, the NBA began hosting regular season games in Europe and since then have been staged in London. Milwaukee Bucks star Giannis Antetokounmpo, the NBA's most valuable player, said on the eve of the game that the team will be out to win.
But at the end of the day, we got a job to do, which is win the game. Just trying to stay locked in, take care of my body, and I know once I get back to the hotel, I'll be focused and I'll be ready for the game.
The Greek forward added that he hopes the NBA will continue to host games in different countries. France's Nicolas Batum, the forward for the Charlotte Hornets, said that French players have been a success in the NBA.
And we have a lot of guys now coming up since then and having good success, having a big part of the team. And now you can see Rudy Gobert now. Pretty sure he's going to be an all-star in a couple of days, in a couple of weeks in Chicago. So that showed that the French basketball is in good shape.
Batum hopes that there will be more French joining the ranks in the future. The match starts at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on January 24th.
2 elephants escaped from a circus in Russia yesterday. Apparently, they went for a walk to see the snow.
Footage showed people using ropes to try to restrain one of the elephants who had fled to an urban area and was playing in the snow. Russian news agencies reported that the mammals managed to escape while circus staff were preparing for them to be transported to another location. An online statement from the circus explained that the elephants decided to take a walk when they saw the snow. After entertaining locals on the street with their presence, both elephants were safely led home and would move to another city.
And that's all for now. Thanks for tuning in. Join us again tonight. I'm Tiffany Meyer.